My father said this very simple statement 20 years ago that I didn't understand the meaning of until now. I dropped out of college and moved back to Germany with my wife and one-year-old daughter at 21 years old in order to work with my father and together develop some cutting-edge technology that should have revolutionized the world in more ways than one. It was an easy decision to make, as my father has always been such an inspiration to me, able to offer a different perspective on things, solving some of the most complex problems and having successfully built a software empire that would grow to be the third largest in Europe. However, when it comes to what most people would consider as simple things like human interaction or verbal communication, my father was struggling. He would become overwhelmed very easily and would end up in a massive meltdown that would leave him screaming and shouting. I did not really know what I was getting myself into when I made the decision to work with my father. While living in the US, I had worked for my father, but working with him was a difference like night and day. It was a huge risk without any guarantees of success when we started working on the concept of the TU-523, a hybrid electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft to facilitate the transportation of freight for infrastructure-deprived areas in order to empower them and become thriving and powerful economies. At one of our family meetings, my mother asked the very valid question: what happens to me if we don't succeed? I might have heard my father's response 20 years ago. Maybe I was lacking the maturity as I didn't understand his response. But after a lot of challenges and self-discovery, I finally got it and I felt euphoric. My father's response to my mother was this: if we don't make it, he will have the skills to do whatever the he wants. It is such a trivial yet incredibly deep statement to make. Or maybe it's just me. As already mentioned, working with my father was not easy. We both pushed each other to the limits, and our patience was tested at least once on a daily basis. Truth is, though, I didn't have any revolutionary ideas that I wanted to pursue for myself, and I was far too arrogant to be working a regular 9 to 5 by now. I was holding on to the belief that my father had built a software empire before and he could do it again. I was only about 2 years old when he started out, so I saw this as a huge opportunity to be part of something great and meaningful. I have learned that motivates me more than anything else. However, when my father suddenly passes away in 2014, I become more and more lost. I overheard someone say that I had big shoes to fill, which is probably the worst thing that I could have heard. Because that is exactly what I tried to do. To keep my father alive, I believed I needed to become him and continue working on the TU-523 and make it a success by any means necessary. The mission to empower others was still there, obviously, but it was not what was driving me. Eventually, I had to realize that this project needed to die before it could be resurrected again, so that I could discover who I am and what it is that I want to do with my life. I had to realize, which didn't come easy at all, that I will never be able to be my father, and trying is only setting me up for failure. This was one of the biggest revelations that came with my ADHD diagnosis at 39 years old, which made me aware that I demonstrated masking behavior all my freaking life, and on top of trying to become my father was making me miserable. I can admit though that without masking and fully embracing the ADHD that is part of me, I can be ridiculously annoying and overwhelming to everyone else around me. However, the opposite is also true. I'm pretty good at the things that I do, and unfortunately, there's a huge difference between telling yourself that this is true and actually embracing and really believing it. This was another huge revelation that came to me as I was finally hired by a large corporate after a year of struggle. Once that pressure of the financial burden was gone, releasing me from being in a constant fight or flight mode allowed me to understand that everything that I had done was preparing me for this moment. Which sounds super cliche. My work is relatively repetitive, and especially with my ADHD, I needed something that would keep me motivated and engaged in the role. I realized how inventive I could be with ideas on improving processes, wrote a bunch of documents, scripts, I designed and built spreadsheets that allows me to analyze and predict behavior that I have tested and has been proven pretty accurate. In meetings, becoming very vocal on identifying problems and offering solutions, which has all been very amazing as it has allowed me to stop being so self-critical and appreciate that I am actually good enough. This is not supposed to sound boastful because we all have brilliance within us. Maybe this is something that I should mention though. We as ADHDers struggle very much with empathy for ourselves. It is not uncommon for us not to feel adequate, good enough, questioning ourselves and really struggle to accept how good we are, which is an awful cycle to be in. Hopefully you already know what makes you brilliant. But for me, it took a long time and consisted of a lot of pain and my desire to find myself. In sports, they say no pain, no gain. I say the best view comes after the hardest climb. So keep climbing. Before I go, I tried so hard to become my father that I didn't realize that when I am myself, there are so many gifts that I inherited from him that I'm very proud of. So my father was right. I have the skills to do whatever the f I want. But to put it in my own words, we are great at everything that we do. My mission is to entertain, inspire and encourage you through the stories that I share. And I hope that I've achieved at least one of these with this video today. I'm Thor and I shall see you in the next one.